I got a headliner in, and I'm going to show you the process on how to do this. This is out of a 4-door truck. I'm not going to show the process on how to remove it from the vehicles because they're all different. I'm just going to go through the process of removing the fabric from the old headliner and gluing the new stuff down. I do have 2 wire brushes. I have a small one and a large one to scrape the old fabric and foam off. I would not recommend using power tools to strip the old foam and fabric, as you can burn through the backing pretty easily. The hardest part about this job, and it just takes time, is stripping the old headliner off. So we'll go ahead and get that stripped. Now, contrary to popular belief, when the headliner starts to sag, it's not the glue that fails. It's the foam that degrades and starts to separate the fabric from the backing. As you can see up here at the top of this, on the front edge, the foam is starting to go where it was hit by the sun. And then this is where it sags in the front of the vehicle. Also, as far as re-gluing the new fabric on top of this old foam, the way that it sits, you get it doesn't sit even, because in some areas like here where the foam is already gone, it will have a depression and it won't sit level with the rest of it, and it just won't look right. So take the time, scrape off the old foam, pay attention, and it's just a time-consuming job. It's not hard. It's just kind of making sure that you get all of it off in all of the areas. Okay? And it does make a mess. Keep a vacuum handy. With the wire brush, it comes off very easily. But you just got to make sure you go back over it a few times to make sure you got everything. It's the next day, and I got everything cleaned off of the old headliner. It took me about an hour to do on a piece this big. For the gluing stage and putting the new fabric back on, I do have a new piece of fabric. I do have a silicone roller. It's not really required, but it does help a little bit in getting in some of the corners to make sure everything smooths out. I am also I have a cheap HVLP Harbor Freight spray gun, and I'm using the DAP Weldwood spray glue. There is a spray can option from 3M, the Super 77. Will work just fine if you don't have a spray gun. As far as any of the other spray adhesives, I haven't used them, so I can't really comment on them. As far as cutting the piece of fabric, I did cut it large. It is overhanging by at least a few inches on all sides. And being that I'm by myself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this back and work on half of it at a time. So I'm going to spray the glue over here, let it tack up, stick it down, and then work on the other side. If you do have two people, you can try to do it in one shot. Just takes a little bit of practice to make sure you don't have any wrinkles in it. As far as spraying the glue, you do want to get a good coverage on that, obviously on the headliner and on the fabric. So if you have any spots, if you need to reapply a couple of times to make sure you don't have any barren spots, go ahead and just take your time spraying the glue. Also, when you were in the scraping off the old headliner, make sure that everything is off of there. If you have to go over it and vacuum it and check it a couple of times, make sure, because if you have any leftover foam that's on here, it can create unevenness when the new fabric is laid across there. So let's get started. Okay, we've got the glue applied to this first section, and we're ready to flip this over and to stick it down. Being that this one is pretty large, if you do have a second person, it is helpful, but it's not too bad. So we're going to spin this around that I can make this a little easier for me. We just kind of want to let it lay. We don't need to stretch it and to pull it. That's going to happen when we start pushing down into all of the to the different contours. You just kind of want to work with it slowly. If you start pushing on it pretty hard, that glue is going to stick, and you're just going to rip the fabric or get a crease in it. And as far as the center section, start pushing down, and the fabric will stretch into all these corners. And this is where that little roller can help. And we're done with that side. It could look very intimidating, but it's not too bad. So we're going to get some glue applied to the back side, and we'll be ready to stick that down. We've got all the glue applied to the second half of this. When you're applying glue into the crease and the fold in here, make sure you kind of look up underneath, peel this back, and make sure you get a good amount of glue inside of this. There could be sometimes a strip that doesn't get glue based on how you're holding the gun or the different angles. We're We'll get this folded over and press it down just like the front half. Okay, we'll flip this over and we'll work on the edges and the holes and get this finished up. So on the back side of this, when it's done from the factory, they just cut these things even with all of the edges. And when the fabric or the foam starts to deteriorate and drop down, there's nothing holding this. Now sometimes around the edges you have some moldings, A pillars, B pillars, and the C pillars, or the console in the center, but usually up in the front or the back of this, there's nothing. Those can be the spots where it drapes down first. So at this stage here, you can trim this flush. Take a razor blade, a nice sharp razor blade, and you can trim it flush and you can be done. That's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but what I do is I will glue this to the back side and I will fold it over about 1 inch. So that way, when the foam deteriorates again, it's less likely to start draping down at these edges. Now, I'm in Central Florida, and it's not a fact of if it will go bad again, it's when it will go bad again. So for my customers, and to try to stop the warranty issues, I fold these over about 1 inch. So I'm just going to do a rough cut relatively about 1 inch away, so I have something to fold over. So now that the glue's set up again, we'll go ahead and start wrapping these corners. Not too much on this, you know, as far as problems or anything. The main part was the big body area surfaces on the top side. So when you're doing the cuts around these corners, you don't want to cut all the way into the edge. You want to come out about maybe 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/8 at the most, so that way when it wraps around into here, you're not seeing any of the fiberglass backing. It's not too critical when you get into here, because a lot of these areas where you have these weird cutouts, there's A pillars and B pillars that will hide all of that. So don't be too conscious if you make a mistake here or there. And here's a little bit of a close-up on what those corners will kind of look like. So that is how easy it is to recover a headliner. Now if you stayed this long on the video, you really want to learn how to redo a headliner, and I'm going to give you a couple of tips. This vehicle, as I said, came out of a four-door truck. Now when you kind of want to find out how these things come out of there, it's easiest on a four-door vehicle, a sedan type, anything without a hatch in the back, that you take the passenger seat out and the rear seat out, and the headliner comes down, folds on its side, and comes out the passenger door behind the driver, and it goes back in the same way. Mainly the easiest ones to do are minivans, SUVs, station wagons are a little bit bigger, but they all come out easily through the back. Personally, I stay away from sunroofs. I stay away from the BMWs. They have these little plastic clips that always break. And any of the classic cars, the older Volkswagens, the ones that you have to glue in, they can be a little bit experienced to learn how to do. Also, the not too older 50s, 60s, and some 70s, they have fabric, and they have bows with metal bows that go through here that get clipped into the side. Those aren't too bad, but I'm in Central Florida. I do a lot of boats, and I can make more money with boats. I don't do that much automotive, like I said, and I didn't even take this one out. The customer took this out themselves and brought it to me and said, you know what, take me a couple hours, I don't have any problem, I'll do this for them. But I generally don't even really do these. The cost of labor to taking them out is completely different. I really won't go into that. Taking them out of, you know, how one set of seats comes out, you know, from one truck to another truck is completely different. Some are easier than others. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe.